dissipate. What else was it like? I came back pretty sure I didn't believe in what we would call the main statements of faith in evangelical Christianity, but I had no alternative. Like, I didn't know how to make a living. I didn't have my replacement theology. Like, well, now I believe this. So I just kind of quietly, I started teaching school. I started doing some sermons, and I thought maybe I can just work this out over time. I'll just kind of be private about my lack of faith or belief. And what I was telling myself at this time is that it doesn't matter what you say you believe, you know? So I'm just going to sign this piece of paper that I believe these things, even though I don't, but it's like a game I'm going to play. And that actually worked for a while. I'm going to operate with my fingers behind my back. That worked until it didn't work. And then when it didn't work, it really didn't work.
No, you think, like, my experience with all this too has been doing it on the job when your livelihood depends on certain things being true of you, like you affirming certain things and knowing you don't. That is torture in a huge way. Like, and how do I say things that I believe are true and not say things that I don't believe are true, but I say them in a way that people at least think I'm saying what they want me to say?
Yeah, I know. It's you can easily get to the place that I think Jesus was talking about when he said you can gain the world and forfeit your soul.
Yeah.
You all of a sudden feel soulless, empty, and a fraud. And I think a lot of pastors in this country are right there. And I have a friend who always says the most atheists in America in terms of jobs are pastors. And he's probably right about that, really, because especially if you think atheism, like after theism, there's something about the theistic sky god that doesn't work anymore. And pastors often know about this. They've read the books. They've seen behind the curtain of the church. They know what it actually is. They know how human it is. And they know all the bullshit language that people use but they don't know how to come out of the closet, so to speak. And I would never push them in that respect. You have to struggle through it yourself. You have to find some authentic as possible way of being in the world. And that's not like a one-time choice. It's hard.
Right. And I think part of the problem too is we haven't given, like, we've assumed there are these dualistic choices between atheism and theism. When I think it's more of a spectrum, right? And I don't know a lot of people. Well, most of the pastors I'm friends with they would not consider themselves supernatural theists. Right?
I know.
And yet the bank the bank gets paid by talking about things in a supernaturally theistic way.
I know.
And it's not working for a lot of people. Like, that's the thing. It's even people in the seats are starting to say, well, what about when God didn't do this? And it would be a good thing for God. You know what I mean? Like, that whole thing is unraveling for lots of people. And I think in some ways being able to say to people, oh, it unraveled for me too, or it's unraveling for me too, as a pastor, that can be really powerful if we can move past the fear.
Yeah, I know. There was I don't know if you've ever heard of Kushner, Rabbi Kushner. I can't think of his first name right now. He's got a bunch of really cool books. But
the Herald? Is that
what's that?
The Herald?
I don't know. Let me when bad things happen to good people. Yeah, that dude. Anyway, he was talking about being in seminary once, and the Jewish version of seminary, of course. And one of his professors said, if you don't seriously doubt the existence of God once a week, then you're spiritually comatose. And that is such a life enhancing way of preparing rabbis to go take a synagogue, telling them this is going to happen. And it also then exposes to the entire community the same reality, because they're doubting the existence of God once a week. Now, in Judaism, they just happen to be much more comfortable with questions and openness and doubt. And, and they read the Bible carefully and they say, oh, our main characters doubt all kinds of things. So, but we just haven't allowed that. We've needed the pastor to be our surrogate. We'll project onto him or her all of our beliefs and morals, and you do it for us so we don't have to look at it. And so if that person cracks, then you have to scapegoat. You have to get him out of there and get the next person in there that's going to, one second, that's going to uphold the facade for us for a while. And that's just not working. And it's not working anymore for people in the pews, and it's not going to work for the budgets and thing. You can now, it's almost a joke. Take every major influential mega church, mega Christian institution, and what's starting to come out? It's the next corrupt leader, the next, sexual misconduct, so-and-so. It's now become a cliche. It started in the 80s and now it's just ramping up. Well, that's bad for both parties. You're putting on to the pastor, you be our perfect person. And it's also bad for the pastor. He's also carrying this like ridiculous burden of other people's projections. And they just drop them like there's no tomorrow. Like, oh, as soon as this becomes a PR thing, scapegoat, get him out of here. It's really kind of a depressing scenario.
It's almost like the whole idea of the whole atonement theology, where we put all the sin on one person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we do that with our beliefs. Like the faith leader, whoever that he or she is, it doesn't matter if we believe it all, as long as they do.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if we can perform, as long as they, and somehow they're vicariously doing this for all of us.
Yeah.
Until they don't.
Yeah, and same works the other way. Like when they start doubting, why can we not handle that? Because that's in us.
Mm-hmm.
When someone says, I cannot, like a few years ago when I was a high school teacher, I did a program for the Discovery Channel on the historical Jesus, and it aired on a Sunday. I went in on a Monday. They said, you can't come to school. And on Tuesday, they fired me. So, and all I was saying in the documentary was, oh, I always thought it was this. Now I'm starting to wonder about this. And they said, we cannot have someone in your position who teaches high school who has doubts and questions. Well, why is that? It's because I'm mirroring back to them what is true in them. Like it's true because if it was just a simple matter of, hey, Kent's got his opinion, I've got mine. Well, that's someone who's grounded somewhere. But as soon as it's like, get out of here, I can't tolerate this, this is dangerous, then the truth is it's just in people and they don't want to look at it.
Yeah. And so the way you do it is you just run them out of town, or you run them out of
exactly. You scapegoat them. Yep. Yeah.
That's
go ahead.
I was going to ask, so you were teaching and then you did a TV program and, and then, so where did you feel like, gosh, this is where I need to fit? Do you ever have, because I wonder that sometimes, and I talk to people who are in our line of work and they're like, I don't know what I can do besides these things.
Yeah. No kidding. I know exactly what you mean. That's why I did every version of negotiating possible to try to keep my job, because I have a graduate degree in biblical studies, comparative religion. That doesn't, unless I'm an academic, that's the other path. But being a white male academic, how boring. You can't get a job, I mean, so that seemed limited and limiting. And I also care about religious questions, ideas, spirituality. So where else are you going to find a spot? But yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. And I ended up doing all manner, like I said, of negotiations to try to stay in the church. But for me, when I finally realized I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to be at the center of an institution. I don't care about the institutional questions, and I certainly don't care about propping up or tearing down what qualifies as the center of faith. I cannot hold this space anymore. Then for me, it was like I just had to leave, even though I had no backup. I had no plan. I had no exit strategy. My friend told me about a year before I left, he's like, make sure you come up with an exit strategy. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to strategically plan my way out. So when when it came to me, I guess in a kind of flood, I just had to like face it then, you know? Yeah. And so I walked out. I wasn't scapegoated out. I walked out. And it was really scary, and it was hard. It was really hard. I struggled mightily to pay bills, and I took all kinds of small jobs and tried to piece my life back together, the survival side of my life. Like, how am I going to make a living? I've got kids. How am I going to pay my mortgage? But it was also really freeing. I had no one left to blame. You know, it was so easy in church world. I had someone to blame all the time, you know, well, the elders this and the staff this and the people this and the church this. And all of a sudden I was like, there's no one else. There's no one else to blame. Like, I walked out. Yeah. So it's terrifying and freeing at the same time.
I guess we met, I think probably as you were sorting through, I think it was Marco Island like 3 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I knew you were sorting through this. And of course, I think as almost everybody I know who is in church leadership, like we have these regular periods of, yeah, I'm probably going to quit.
Yeah.
It's called Monday, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Monday morning. And so you made the decision to walk out, accepted the consequences of that. What is it? What has it been like for you to be able to do your thinking? So there's no one else to blame, but there's also, I'm sure, a freedom there. I mean, I look at people, for example, like Brian McLaren or Rob Bell, for example, even, who being disconnected from leading a local church seems to have opened their work up in all sorts of other ways. So do you feel like you could have written your book while being a pastor, or do you feel like that would have been difficult?
I couldn't have done it, I don't think. No. Not that my book is super controversial, but I didn't want to be in a place where I was worried about how this might be taken, you know, or, you know, what might so-and-so think, or it would have been psychologically difficult, I think, to write an honest book. And it's like Oscar Wilde. He said, never underestimate man's ability to misunderstand something when his paycheck depends upon it. So which is like a very clever way of saying, when you're getting paid, it's hard to tell the truth. And it's, by the way, why the prophets in the Bible never, ever, ever, ever work for the king. Not one time. They're independent. I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but they do not take money from the king, because if they do, they can't speak. They can't say anything truthful. This is why you cannot be both a prophet or a prophetic kind of figure and work for the United States government. You can't. When they pay your bills, you will not see it. You can't see it, you know? But anyway, that's just like a soapbox for a second.
Oh, I agree 100%. And I have a friend who says, he always asks me, are you going to give your random rant about Constantine now?
Yeah.
You know, it's like the church, when the church gets power in that sort of way, it becomes much harder to say, well, Caesar's probably just misunderstood. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, yeah, totally. I mean, Jesus was killed because he was a prophetic figure. That's just the bottom line. He did not take money. He did not take money from the state. He was not an employed priest. He did not work for Rome. He was a wildly independent, free-thinking, radical revolutionary, although maybe he wouldn't have called himself a revolutionary. Who knows? We'd have to ask him. But had he been like, you know, working for the synagogue or something, you better believe he'd be taming it. It's just human nature, you know? It's just human nature.
I think it was Wild Goose last year. I heard Dr. Barber give a sermon. And in the sermon, he said, we have to decide if we're going to be priests of the empire or prophets of God, because we can't be both. That's
right. That's a age-old archetypal division. And there's a lot of truth to it. No kidding, which makes being a pastor hard, and that's actually what made people like Rob funny and interesting, is that he would often say prophetic things, but it's like, wait a minute, he also works for this church. And And he eventually just went on his own, like he had to say what he was going to say. And he was like, you guys, you want to call